I had always walked into family gatherings with hope, a wish for warmth and connection. But over the years, those hopes had quietly faded. Each event had become a test, a silent battlefield where every smile and laugh carried hidden judgment. Today, holding my son's small hand, I felt the familiar knot of anxiety tighten in my chest. The room was filled with faces that pretended cordiality, but I knew the subtle arrogance behind their eyes. It started innocently enough, polite greetings, small talk, but then it happened. My nephew, barely old enough to understand cruelty, yet trained in it, mouthed the words I had dreaded, "Trash belongs outside." The words struck harder than I expected. I felt my cheeks flush and a sharp sting of anger rise, but I forced myself to stay calm. This was not about reacting in the moment. This was about control, about protecting my son from their poison. I noticed the smirks, the stifled laughs, the subtle approval in the adults' expressions. Their amusement was intentional, designed to humiliate me without confrontation. But as I looked down at my son, trusting and unaware, I realized I would not give them the satisfaction of witnessing my collapse. I steadied my breath, offered a faint nod, and silently vowed that this humiliation would not go unanswered. Gently, I guided my son toward the door. I didn't shout or argue. I simply left, letting the act of walking away carry more weight than any reaction could. Outside, the air felt liberating, and a sense of calm clarity settled over me. For the first time in years, I understood that I held the power to turn the quiet observation into something meaningful, and when the time came, the reckoning would be mine. The days after that lunch were spent in quiet reflection. Driving home with my son asleep beside me, I realized the cruelty had been methodical. My nephew had been coached, my sister-in-law had orchestrated the dynamics, and my parents had become passive observers, too hesitant to intervene. Every glance and smirk now made sense, a pattern of subtle, intentional manipulation designed to keep me small. I began observing the family more carefully, noticing the tiny cracks they thought I couldn't see, the favors they hoarded, the quiet dismissals, the way achievements were celebrated or ignored. It all formed a pattern, a web of control and disdain. I recorded these details in my mind, not for vengeance and anger, but to prepare for a response that could not be denied. At home, I focused on my son, reinforcing a world of respect and love. I wanted him to see strength not in yelling, but in patient, deliberate action. Each small gathering became a stage where I observed silently, watching their assumptions unravel in subtle ways. Their arrogance, long unchecked, was revealing its own weaknesses. I planned carefully. I would not confront them in the heat of the moment. I would wait for the right time, the right opportunity to act with precision. The next gathering would be my stage. I imagined the moment when their manipulations, their favoritism, and their cruelty would all be visible to everyone. I had endured, observed, and calculated. Now I was ready. The quiet anticipation was intoxicating. I realized the power of patience and measured response. I was no longer the passive target. I had become the architect of the reckoning they could never foresee. Every insult, every smirk, every attempt to belittle me had inadvertently prepared the stage for the exposure of their own flaws. And with that knowledge, I felt a deep, quiet satisfaction, knowing that when the time came, the impact would be undeniable. The next family gathering arrived, but I felt calm, grounded, and in control. Holding my son's hand, I entered the room with measured steps, each movement deliberate. The familiar smirks and practiced expressions greeted me, but I no longer feared them. This time, I observed, letting their words and gestures reveal themselves. I shared a subtle story of my recent accomplishments, carefully framed to highlight truths they had ignored for years. I did not raise my voice or retaliate in anger. I allowed facts and clarity to speak. The room shifted. Smiles faltered. Eyes widened. And even my parents looked at me differently, a mix of surprise and respect in their gaze. The arrogance of my sister-in-law and the smugness of my nephew began to crack, exposed in quiet, undeniable ways. Every insult and act of belittlement I had endured now rang hollow. I had not reacted impulsively. I had let observation and patience build a quiet but powerful response. My son, watching beside me, saw strength in patience and dignity in action. As we left, hand in hand, the air felt lighter than it had in years. Behind us, the family was caught in a mixture of disbelief and reluctant acknowledgement. I had endured, I had observed, and I had acted. The quiet reckoning was complete, and finally, a sense of peace and closure settled over me. I walked away, not only reclaiming my dignity, but showing my son the power of measured strength. And in that calm departure, I understood the quietest presence often leaves the heaviest mark.